Huckabee Sanders joins me to talk about this, her brand new book, Speaking for Myself. It's a terrific, congratulations, Sarah. This is a terrific read. It's
Thank you.
very well thumbed copy. I want to thank you for the shout out and the shout out to Jan Janura, but I got to warn you, I was going to invite you over for dinner, but not if you bring George. If you bring George, he sounds like a little destructo machine, and he's not getting anywhere near my plumbing.
No, you don't want him probably anywhere near a dinner table either. We're working on it, but he is quite a mess at all times. And I say probably at least 2 or 3 times a day. Thank goodness God made you really cute. Otherwise, I don't know if we could tolerate all of the antics, but he keeps us on our toes and he is a lot of fun.
It's my laugh out loud moment. There are a lot of funny parts in Speaking for Myself, but the funniest part is the plumbing incident with George. Sarah, I'm going to come back to the book in a second. There are two rules to selling books. Say the title 7 times, according to Frank Luntz, Speaking for Myself, and then make some news. So I want to make some news first. What do you make of the four debate moderators? We've got Chris Wallace, Steve Scully, Kristen Welker, and Susan Page for the vice presidents. What do you think?
Well, I think it's an interesting mix of people. Certainly, I think you've got some people, seasoned journalists who have been around a long time, like Chris Wallace, Susan Page, who have been kind of doing, big moments and big stage for a while. And then you have kind of a newcomer in Kristen Welker, Steve Scully, obviously having been around. But also, I think I like Steve being a moderator. He is certainly more of a news guy, middle of the road, pretty neutral on C-SPAN, doesn't really rally one side, the left or the right, too much. So I think he's a good middle of the road moderator. The rest, we'll see. The good news is, I think Donald Trump is going to do spectacular regardless of who the moderator is. I think he actually tends to do better in an interview that is harder. I think it's when he really rises to the moment, and I feel very comfortable about where he'll be with that group of moderators.
Sarah, in Speaking for Myself, you draw the distinction between Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity on one side, and on the other side, news journalists. Do you put Chris and Kristen in that category? Scully really is. It's hard to argue that Steve Scully's other than a news guy. He's the most straight up guy in town. But what about the other two?
I think they both have certainly some leaning and some bias. It's probably a little hard not to after a guy like Chris Wallace, who's been doing it a long time, in the way that he does. And I have personal opinions on that matter. I think they both lean a little left of center. But hopefully they can be pretty neutral in this. Kristen's going to have a tough job in terms of making, I think, the network that she works for happy in how she moderates this debate. And so she's certainly going to be pulled to the left. But I worked with her at the White House. I know that she has the ability to be fair. So we'll see what happens on that front.
Yeah, that's the network I work for. Kristen's very smart. I assume, though, the people in her ear, you've got to be careful about the people in her ear. Sarah, let me go to your book. The one thing I want to emphasize for people, you're the first mom who was ever a press secretary. And you thread that through this book. I think it's an inspiration to working moms everywhere because your job, you were at the desk by 6:30. President had, I think it's on page, uh, I like to tell people this, 87. Usually by 6:30, the president was tweeting and making news, which would completely alter a day. I never knew how you planned a day when the president decided to tweet, but it's really a working mom book. There's no one who's working harder than the White House press secretary, but you managed it. Did you make that an objective when you set out?
I did, but in large part because this was my story to tell, and I can't separate being a mom from everything else I do. It's so entwined into every moment of my life, not just because my kids are at the ages that they're very demanding in their needs and my time, but also it's the reason that I serve. It's the reason that I want to work in politics. It's the reason that I wanted to work in the White House is because I want my kids to have the kind of America and the kind of future that allows them to be and do anything that they want to do. And so it's I really tried to make it also a fun read. I love to read just hard political policy books. I think they can be a little bit boring. So I wanted this to have some of those fun, more personal moments. I hope people will laugh. I hope they'll cry and maybe even be inspired as they read through the book. But certainly, I think working moms have so many challenges, and I wanted them to know they're not alone. So often, I think women are their own toughest critics, and I hope that they know that there is a support system of people out there who are doing it with them and understand the challenges that they face.
I think you accomplished that from your last moment at the Holocaust Memorial when you're 11, from the first moment going to Al Assad with the president. By the way, Air Force One sounds a lot less glamorous. I've never traveled on it. I've only been on Air Force Three with the National Security Advisor. But sleeping on the floor and the couches, and we should talk about your spades addiction. It just doesn't sound very glamorous when you write it up the way you do.
I would rather call it my spades victory versus addiction. I think addiction makes it sound negative. Spades champion sounds much better. So, you have to occupy your time because you're on that
Yeah.
plane an awful lot, particularly on those overseas trips. There are no long stops on that. Certainly, I don't know. You don't want to call it unglamorous because it's still the most incredible aircraft I've ever been on. The sleeping quarters a little bit questionable at times as people are just sprawled out all over the place, looking for a quiet corner. But at the same time, it was one of the best moments because that was when our team really had time to spend with one another, where we weren't dealing as much with all the pressures and got to relax a little bit on some of those long trips. And so it was a time I actually really cherish and enjoyed, because I got to know a lot of my colleagues that way, and develop some really good friendships along the way.
You cover in detail all of the controversies. Sean Spicer in the bushes, April in the pie, the red hen. But my first and last White House Correspondent Association dinner for me, the first one I went to, the last one I will ever go to, because of what happened, was the Michelle Wolf dinner. And I was one of those people, for whatever reason, they cut away to me in the audience. My wife said I was grim faced and lockjawed. You said people were horrified. I was just disgusted. I've never seen anything like that. I actually have never seen anything like that. You're very, uh, I think, restrained in describing it, but you don't hold back. She ambushed you and she saw you before, which I did not know until that. And she gave you no warning what she was going to do.
Not at all. And I think that was one of the things that I found interesting in our exchange, and that I tried to paint that picture in the book. We're all in a backstage area at a reception, and these are people that I know. In that moment, I wasn't the outsider. I work with those reporters every day. They know me. They've listened to dozens of stories about my kids. I know most of their hobbies and stories about their kids. And I tried to paint that picture that we were people that spent every day together. She was the one that came in and changed the dynamic of the room. And you could just feel a difference in the room once she got there. And we took the stage, and I knew that there would be some snark, and I figured that there would certainly be some jokes, but I was not prepared for the level of nastiness that she brought in that moment. And I had a lot of thoughts about what I should do as she was, attacking me right there on stage next to her, and decided at the end of the day to hold my head up and stay in my seat was probably the best thing, to let her know that I wasn't going to let her tear me down, and I wasn't going to let her impact me in the way I think she wanted to.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders, in speaking for myself, when you cover that, that's going to be taught in media courses forever as how to conduct yourself in a situation where you're being relentlessly, ferociously, and slanderously attacked. They're going to show how you just, with dignity and grace, went through that. Let me talk a little bit about, I just said earlier, the gold medal for abuse goes to anyone named Trump, but the silver medal goes to you. And we've got it. How do you tell people going into public life how to handle their children when they're going to have to put up with this wave of hatred online and an occasional, I mean, the LA Times reporter calling you the chunky soccer mom. That, I would be thrown off the radio if I did that to anybody. I would. So how do you warn the standards are different for conservatives and liberals, and the conservatives are going to get hammered?
Well, I think the most important thing is to know who you are on the front end. I am thankful that I'm not looking for definition to my life from the New York Times or the Washington Post. I have that already from a God who created me. And so, knowing who I am and what I believe in before I ever stepped foot in that building was really important for me, and something I try to talk with my kids about. They're young, so it can be difficult. And there are certain things, frankly, I just try to shield them from having to be part of some of the nastiness that's involved. But in the moments that they are exposed to, we try to be honest. We try to talk about why we treat other people with respect. No matter if we disagree with them, we still can do that and do so in a respectful way. So I use it as best I can to be a teaching moment of how we don't want to act and how we don't want to treat other people, because that's not how we want to be treated. I think it's as simple as going back to the very basics of treat other people the way you want to be treated. And we tried to use those moments to pass that message to our kids.
One of the winsome things about the book is that you say nothing negative about anyone that isn't publicly known, like the Michelle Wolf controversy. In fact, you say nice things about Jim Acosta, which will stun a few people. I want to close with the president's call to you after you had left. You matter of fact, mentioned that you're alligator hunting in Louisiana, which I put down to say I didn't really know people did that. So you're alligator hunting, and the president calls you and he says, "Are you running for governor yet?" So he kind of has an idea what you're going to do next. You want to make a little news, Sarah? Are you running for governor yet?
Not quite. I don't think we're ready to make news yet, but I thought we already checked the make news on the front end of
I
the
did.
interview. But
Now they have to watch the whole thing.
okay. Definitely very serious about it, but right now focused on helping the president in 2020. Arkansas governor's races in 2022. So I'll make a decision sometime after we get through this election, get the president reelected, and I'd love to see us take back the House and never have to say Speaker Pelosi again. So those are big priorities for me right now, and after we do that, I'll make a final decision.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders speaking for myself is a terrific